The signing into law of the US Inflation Reduction Act last August was seen as a breakthrough in the global green transition, with an estimated $370 billion to flow to investment across the US economy to achieve their ambitious emission reduction targets. However, this legislation also sets up strict limits around commodities and component sourcing for the goods required for this investment. A simple example highlights the absolute nature of these rules. The adoption of electric vehicles is a key means by which US emissions are to be reduced in coming decades, given transport represented 27% of all emissions in 2020. The Inflation Reduction Act incentivises change by offering a significant tax credit to EV purchases. But to qualify for the full credit, the vehicle needs to be assembled in North America, and by 2026, 80% of the battery's components by value must also come from the US or nations which have a free trade agreement with the US. Why is this policy decision a concern for the global green transition? Because China, who certainly does not have a free trade agreement with the US, is essential to the global supply of electric vehicles and componentry, as well as many other goods critical to the green transition. To give a sense of China's importance to global supply, Bloomberg NEF estimate that China represents over 70% of battery cell production, lithium refining, and wind turbine nacelles. More significant still, China is also currently producing over 95% of the global supply of solar wafers and ingots. Given the pivot China is making into Asian markets and the need the region has for green energy and transport, any Chinese-produced products that the US does not want could instead be marketed to Asia, not to mention other developed and developing nations. The US's decision to impose protectionist measures on production related to the green transition is therefore principally a threat to its own emissions reduction goals, not China's strength. The fringe risk, however, is if the US splinters the global production chain by encouraging other countries to apply similar restrictions against China. This has been seen already for semiconductors and related machinery. Even if broader action were to be taken against China, they would still have their own domestic demand and that of the developing world to satiate, admittedly with less of a profit margin. The developed world would meanwhile face higher transition costs, lacking the production and logistic chains to produce componentry as efficiently as China does. Competition and inefficiency in the sourcing of commodities, labour and freight would add further uncertainty to costs and supply to end users. The financial bill to the world could become substantial, but it is the time delays in adoption and emissions reduction and the adverse impact on the environment that will prove most costly. Even if the US and other nations were to dramatically ramp up investment in their own supply chains and prove successful, it would be years before enough capacity came online to meet their own needs, let alone those of other countries. All the while, China will be moving ahead, using the productive capacity already built and that under construction to reduce their emissions and increase productivity, while also strengthening their relationships across the developing world. Ironically then, the stand that US authorities have taken against Chinese supply may, in the long run, improve China's political standing and economic power. We'll see you next time.